going to put Jason Turner on the spot first. So, sorry, Jason.
Thank you.
So you've heard, yes, that's the objective of that's the real objective is today is to get Jason Turner wearing pink socks by the end of it. We've all heard 3 fantastic presentations, and you, with Danny and Chris, had gone over to London a few weeks ago to see the guys here. What are the key things you have taken away from these discussions in terms of what has struck you as we've got to learn that lesson, we've got to do that here in Jersey?
I think from a really positive point of view, what we're trying to achieve is in line with what others are trying to do in the UK, and that some, particularly in Hampshire and Bristol, have already achieved a lot of what we're trying to do. There's a lot to learn, so we can look at what Southampton are doing. Some of our patients are already using some of those systems, so have some knowledge of that, and an opportunity to learn from them and understand their experiences. I think also the enthusiasm that we've seen today, and the passion, and some of the stories that underpin why it is to be done need to be understood and communicated to a wider audience, so that actually brings it to life. So we're not doing it because we want an IT system or we think it's a nice thing to do, but actually it will make a difference to people and how people care for and know.
Great. And a question to the rest of you on the panel. So we talked about the size of Jersey. So if we gave you Jersey to play with for a year, so you've got representative Western demographic, you've got a real close environment. It's hard to get off the island, especially with some of our transport links. And 104,000 people, one hospital, GP on one system, GPs on the same system. What would you do in that first year? You had control. If you could play God with the system here, what would you focus on if you were Jersey?
Is my mic still working? Can people hear?
Yeah.
Okay. I follow up on what Amir said, really, and what we've been thinking between us, which is you've got a beautiful size population where you can actually do something meaningful. It's really hard for us. We've talked about, we've had a national programme that, let's face it, failed. We now have a new proposed architecture around 5 million populations. That has interface issues, usually, unless you're in Cornwall. They're getting a lot of mentions today, Cornwall, but they're lucky because they've got one border that's only 12 miles across, I think, somewhere. But you have a great opportunity, actually. And Amir said, well, you could get everyone signed up. Well, you could. Think about what you're doing, though, because what you sign them up to, you've got to have something that's capable of going forward. So, I wouldn't necessarily say it's all about just creating a citizen ID that is like an identity card, because if you do have any libertarians in your population, they will get wound up at the concept.
105,000, I think.
Yeah. The concept of an identity card is deeply unpopular in the UK as it is here, actually. But the concept of having an identity that you can use for health is a very popular one. And then you can move on from there and start doing some things very quickly, like the consent piece. We haven't done it yet, actually, but it's been on our minds for ages, and actually it's quite easy to do. But consent for clinical trials, for example. I don't know how many people know, but lots of clinical trials fail because they cannot get people recruited onto the trial. And people who are doing research are not allowed to trawl through medical records to find the patients that could benefit from being on the trial because of the information governance. So if you've got patients with certain conditions who have an online account with you, then you can start to surface to say, hey, this thing might be good for you. So, and you start saying to patients, well, are you interested in this? Or are you okay for us generally to share your information with research people in case anything comes up, and you can tick that as well. So it's like Amir said again, that there are lots of different things you can put down as consent. That's an important piece. But I would say, I think actually, and it's, you know, Southampton are driving quite hard on this, as you can see, but we've started to look at, you know, I'm not talking about giving the patient, you know, the electronic patient record, handing it over. That is not the case. But we're looking at maternity at the moment as a use case. And what we found actually is that systems were built for historical reasons, to be hospital-centric. And therefore it's all about the record in the hospital. And when you start to analyse the maternity piece, we can build 2/3 of what is traditionally within a maternity application, actually within the personal health record platform. You know, what do you need in a maternity application? Well, you need things like a delivery suite, obviously. You know, and they've got data sets, and maybe that's why you've got to do that. But lots of things that matter. Growth chart there, build that tick, easy, you know, online access to that. All of the child health record, all the visits, always available to you because it's on your mobile device. You know. So you can start to think about pushing more towards that personal health record, and that's why we're building it. But I think to start thinking seriously about getting a platform that will take you forward, don't be lulled into doing something short-termist.
So I think just one of my reflections on today, what you've heard really is three lenses, three ways of looking at the same challenge actually from us. We're all talking about the same problem, the problem being how do you give the maximum information you can appropriately and safely to the right individual so that they can then make the right decisions, whether that's the patient or the professional. What I talked about this morning was really how you take a legacy architecture. You know, frankly, we wouldn't have built the thing we've built in the way we built it had we known this was the challenge we were going to face. But so we've taken a legacy architecture and found a way of putting a portal over that to give the professionals, the care professionals, a shared record. What Adrian's talked about tonight really is how you bring the patient into that part of that conversation as well, how you give them and empower them to be part of that. And what Amir's touched on amongst other things, including a pink software, is how you create open standards. So actually going forward, you can share all of that thing. I would say if I was you doing the Jersey Challenge, you can't afford to ignore any of those. You need to come at all of those problems simultaneously. It is now possible to do that. We're just describing different aspects of how you create shared care, really, in the thing. It's well within your gift to create a programme of work that would include activity around, you know, adopting PHR technologies and building a platform the way Adrian's described around maximising the use of your Ensemble platform to create a shared care record for your professionals to work with and to stay close to initiatives like Interopen so that your vendors, whether that's InterSystems or EMIS, whoever it is, are leveraged to adopt open standards so you can share the record. I probably would err away from trying to follow a single strategy at this point. You've got to ride all of these horses simultaneously. That's what we're doing. And that's what you need to do as well. I think the big advantage you've got here is just scale. It's relatively tiny. You've got a very enclosed environment. You've got relatively, believe it or not, you're pretty well off financially in the setting, certainly compared to some of the communities in England these days. And I think software vendors especially will be really interested in you. You're a great digital lab, and they will be interested in coming and helping you make it happen. So. Yeah, go for it all if you might for us.
Thanks. On that InterSystems piece, they could put a patient index in across the whole island. Huge benefit. You can start to hang everything off that there.
Yeah, well, somebody said to me earlier actually, not having the spine here was a big disadvantage, and I'd challenge that.
I build your own.
Try working with NHS Digital in the spine for a while, and you'll see whether you think it's a good thing or not.
I've built an index on that InterSystems platform. That's that.
Thanks. And here, you want to add?
Two things. Remember who you're doing this for, and hold yourself to account with stories that come from those people. Create a library of those stories and regularly check in if what you're doing is going to meet those, because that's what you're here to deliver. You are not here to deliver an IT project. You're here to change the lives of people. And the second thing is get those people involved in delivering this. They will hold you to account. As I guarantee you, you're not going to be able to hold yourself to account very well, because the people you're going to deliver it for aren't on those boards. Then you're going to have invisibility to the actual customer. They are your customer. deliver for them and get them involved.
So our next question, building on that a bit, so I think we've got a great opportunity in Jersey in the sense that so we're about to start constructing a brand new state-of-the-art hospital. Aren't we, Julie? We are. Yeah. You'd never guess this was a great opportunity for the media in Jersey, but we're going to get that. You know, with your experience, what sort of opportunity is that? You know, we've got one hospital here. We're about to invest in what for the size of Jersey's population, will be a major project. In terms of what we've discussed today, what additional opportunity does that give Jersey to really get ahead of the curve in this area?
So I'll start. I talked this morning a little bit about the WACTA review, that was published last year, and so I really recommend it. Again, I'll just reiterate, to take a bit of time and read some of the recommendations that have come out of that, because it's an exceptionally good piece of work. And what Bob talks about is this huge adaptive change journey that technology and digital offers. So putting the technology in is one part of it. What you actually got to do is change all the culture and the behaviour that sits around that. And he talks about, in fact, I was just reflecting when we met in the leagues, actually, we was talking about this, the way in which sometimes life deals you an opportunity to act as a catalyst for change, if you like. And I think your hospital build is one of those moments. It's a reason for redesign of activities. It's a reason to not just say, well, we'll carry on doing like that because that's how we've always done it. You change and you look at the way it's done. And I'm sure as you design your new hospital, you'll visit some of the more impressive new hospitals around Europe really, and see some of the way in which people have changed hospital designs, changed working practices to then do that. So I would say I think the biggest thing it offers you, and I'm big on the people part of these technology journeys. I don't think the tech is ever the hardest part of it. I think the biggest thing it offers you is a reason to engage with your workforce about the way they work and change their way of working go forward. So it's kind of don't miss that, because you can get one go at that. They'll only walk into that building once the first time, and things like that. It's making it feel different and digital for them.
Right. Adrian?
So, one thing I would be clear about is don't copy what other people have done necessarily, re-engineer. You've got an opportunity to re-engineer what you're doing when you put in a hospital and an IT system. And there's a tendency, if you take, I mentioned Gartner there in my presentation, 5 years ago, if you listened to Gartner and you said you build a new hospital, they would have said, oh, well, there's only two options for you. You're either going to buy Epic or Cerner. That's it. Now they've changed their tune on this. So the problem with that is, it seems like it's never a good time to invest in technology, actually, because it's such a fast-moving thing, that the open platforms that we talk about aren't quite there. So, in some ways I'm quite glad I'm where I am, because I've got a stable system and I can afford to play with the new technologies on the edge, and yet you're building a new hospital. Would you really go and throw a whole load of new stuff in a new
Don't
hospital?
put them off, please don't put anyone off.
I'm not trying to, I think it's a great opportunity, but I would say, think about where you can experiment with innovation, in that piece, and don't, and then try and be innovative yourself in the way you're thinking about re-engineering process. Obviously, you're going to build it to be a paperless environment, because
obviously,
but you've got to think about, can we use tracking technologies? There's opportunities for those. If you've got medical devices in the hospital, well, hook them all up. Traditionally, all of that stuff just sits standalone. You've got people retranscribing information, they take a blood pressure reading, they type into something else. Connect everything up.
Good. Mia?
Healthcare is really, really difficult, because we tend to be quite, and I think this is a challenge for clinicians working in the organisation, because there's so many other people part of it, but we tend to not all see the moment where patient X or patient Y might actually look into your eyes and go, you really made a difference. We're not all exposed to those moments where actually you think, shit, that's why I'm doing this job. So it can actually feel like that customer satisfaction bit doesn't really get propagated down to everybody. And so, you know, when you're on Uber and you like feedback, and I look at my feedback ratings like drop down, like shit, what did I do wrong? You know, human interaction, we all want to be liked. And so, like, you want your hospital to be liked, and you want your services to be liked, and you want your patients to like you. So you've got to invest in the communication, the marketing, and the culture of that. I don't care if it's digitally the best in the world, because you could have the worst culture there. So it's not about digital, it's about culture and enablers like digital. So I just keep warning you, it's not about digital, it's about culture and digital enablers.
Right. So I'm going to ask Jason about this. So if Julie said, actually, Jason, I'm going to let you do what you want in the design of this hospital, you know, I've listened to all
You
this.
sound like somebody worth knowing.
What would you do?
Well, I think it's an interesting question. I won't actually say what I was going to say about locations, but I think picking up on everyone's comments they made so far, it is interesting. I think there is a once in a generation opportunity with a new building where everyone's going to have to work differently in the new building anyway, and there's going to be an expectation of change and things will be different. There is an opportunity there to actually take advantage of the technology, use the digital enabling that Neil's talking about, to change the way we do things, to capture data differently. I do envisage that everything will be linked up, with certainly in the early stages of talking about the specification of the hospital. Bernard, who's leading the project, is here. We are having those conversations. The new hospital, I think, will have the biggest IT footprint of anything in this island that we've ever had. And it will need to, because it will need to take advantage of not just what we know today, but what may come tomorrow that we've no idea about. And years after that, we may not even be able to think about today. We've got to try and future-proof it as much as possible. And what we don't want to be doing is thinking in 10, 20 years' time, if only we'd had an eye to that, and we could do something very different.
Good. I could keep asking this sort of questions all night. I'd like to open it up to the floor. Questions? Got one?
How's it going?
Sorry, I've got the mic here.
Thank you. Really, I just want to ask Alan Reid a question about the importance of what we deliver has the clinicians in mind, because we hear a lot about the patients, which is the right thing to do, but also there's a clinician view to this. These are the people that are going to use the services that we deliver from a technology perspective that will then enhance the service they give to their patients. And so we mustn't lose sight when we deliver these services that clinicians are the first point of that contact. So I'd like to know what your views are on that, especially from your perspective as a clinician. And secondly, I'm a technologist. I've been in IT for about 30 odd years, mainly in finance, and I've only recently come into health. But what I have seen since I've been here is that although we have these great ideas of open architecture, which is standard in most banks and places like that, when we deliver this, what's our next steps? So what is our future state after that? And so to that point, there are a lot of, I think it was mentioned earlier about Internet of Things. There's things like augmented reality and virtual reality, which I think has a real good role to play within health. Really, I think that's a very, very important thing. So a lot of things that we are developing, especially with open source and things like the cloud, how we now, these type of technologies, how we're going to use those, and do you have experience with those?
So on the clinician point, I'm pleased to hear that you do have clinical engagement, but you need to make it real. So you need to, what do other businesses do? They follow people around, they do business analysis, they look at the processes. They look at number of clicks, they make things more efficient. I am quite disappointed in the service that I'm involved with, that I can't get single sign-on in from a particular provider that does primary care to a shared care record. And so that's me multiplied by how many times? And that's me multiplied by how many lack of information? You've got an opportunity here to not only listen to those issues, but not let a vendor come in who doesn't let you access data. So those are two parts, because that bit will then aggravate your clinicians and they'll have lost faith. So if they say, I'm working on the front line to do really hard stuff, to deal with patients with really difficult problems, help them. So if you stop delivering, they'll lose interest too. That's the bit on, I don't have as much experience on the other part, but I would ask you to focus on the basics.
When Bob Wachter does his presentation, he puts up a slide of a job advert. It's the moment in about 2012 when he realised, it was a bit earlier than that, I think, wasn't it? About 2010, when he realised that the US had got it completely wrong. And it's an advert for a physician in a hospital in the Midwest, and it describes the benefits of going to work at that hospital, because obviously they're competing for clinical talent. And it has a number of attributes, like salary in the range of this, whatever, free car, all of these sort of things that might attract somebody to apply for the job. And then at the bottom of the advert, in bold letters, underlined, it says no electronic patient record, as in it is trying to attract people by the fact that they haven't got an electronic record, because at that point the electronic records in the US were so poorly designed that clinicians loathed them, absolutely loathed them. And that's how you approach it, to write digital doctor and then go on and talk about the work he's done on that. And so I think lots of what we do day to day, to be absolutely honest, is to work in that professional space, supporting clinicians. And you remember in the story I told this morning, all of those shared records I was talking about that my team's involved in across Southern England, they are all, by and large, entirely professional-facing shared records. It's, aid to work in Southampton is fairly unique in terms of people getting into the patient space. Most of it is about sharing records on behalf of clinicians to support them in that. So I think your point's well made, but I do think generally that is where the priority focus is for most people at the moment anyway.
I mean, I'm going to echo most of what Amir and Andy said really about clinical engagement. We haven't talked specifically about Chief Clinical Information Officer, and that is important. I think that someone takes that role, whatever you call them, is what you like really. But I do believe that they're important when you're talking about implementing big IT systems in clinical areas for that clinical engagement piece, but also for the design part. And then they bring people through who are engaged, and clinicians have to be involved in all the project teams associated with it as well. So that's what I would say really. It's just echoing what both of these two said.
Am I allowed to say I'm not, you're just a GP thing? Basically, yeah. I've been said you're just a GP a lot of times in IT projects, and that's culture change as well. You've got to bring in, technologists and clinicians do have to work together. Okay, there's a lot of NHS and a lot of technologists, and there's a lot of tech and a lot of clinicians, and those, you need to foster that.
Okay, so we're going to have that CCIO role here in Jersey.
Indeed, we are. Our current CCIO, Dr. Prince, has just retired from that role, but there will be a replacement that we will need to appoint.
And CNIOs and nursing leaders and physio leaders are all part of the team, especially nursing.
Yes, our chief nurse who is with us is particularly engaged with this, and we actually have a programme for tomorrow where she's sitting there leading that up. I think I just wanted to perhaps bring everyone back to this graph about the single sign-on. And I think that shows what happens when you do and don't have critical engagement. Clearly, when you do, things are going to change. When you don't, things will run the way they want.
Jason, I think for your own protection, I need to point out that Amir will let people use that graph, but he charges £10 every time. That is a well-known fact in England.
He's going to pay for the socks somehow.
Our colleague Joe who chairs the CCIO network routinely puts that graph up on the slide and then walks over to the edge of the stage to pass the £10 note to Amir.
I think I've made that £80 so far.
You got another question, the audience? Right over here.
The panel, in your world, is all this in English? Or do you deal with multiple languages?
I think it's a mixture, actually. You know, most of our IT systems within hospitals are in English. Well, there's increasing need for language support for things that are patient facing.
But the electronic patient records, they're all in English,
Yes.
and no other language.
Yes.
We've installed some software in GP practices that will do translation. So Able Translation Bristol's got a fairly large Somali population. So we've got some software in there that aids with that, but the actual capture of the record itself is all in English.
Can I ask, do you mean the patient-facing aspect or the clinician-facing or both?
I was mainly talking about the patient records. I mean, we've probably got, what, about 15% non-English patients here with varying degrees of appreciation. You know, I suppose it can be quite difficult imagining that all of those people are going to be able to interact in the way that you described.
But they'll go on a journey too. And I think you'll just get feedback and then you'll respond to the feedback and you'll invest in that bit. Is there something else that needs prioritisation? And it will just be the same iteration that will happen with anything else. You know, I use Google Translate loads in clinics. Works a treat. So I think, you know, you'll iterate because, you know, you've obviously grasped the agenda and you want to go forward. So those things will be just part of that journey that you're on, depending on the feedback you get and being open to that feedback.
I forget which country this was talking about the other day. I was just trying to wrap my brain through it. But there is a country out there, and I'll think of the name later, where it is later, but they were occupied in the war by the Germans. And after that, the medical staff and German. So they were writing in the notes in German so that the patients couldn't read it.
Another question, anything, Chris?
Hi, thanks for a great session tonight. Knowing now our time frame, our hopeful expected time frame for the hospital, what does the future look like, and what do you expect the future to look like, and what do we need to build to get to that future? I'm thinking about the operating model as much as the technology.
Well, you know, the glib answer to that in the NHS is that we should be keeping people out of health institutions. We should be building systems that allow for more people to stay in home type setting. So, you know, I think the NHS believes that it can cope with less beds as a result. So what does the future look like in that context? Currently, you know, you won't have hospitals generally monitoring patients at home, but I think in the future you will. You know, those devices that are currently medical devices will increasingly become consumer devices. So, like an 8-lead ECG, for example, you can get one of those now that works with your phone. You know, it's as good as the kind of thing you'll get if you're sitting in our majors in emergency department. So there'll be monitoring at home. Patients there'll be early intervention. So one of our projects is working with the British Heart Foundation on the heart failure project. Hasn't started yet, but they have an ambition to monitor patients at home and their weight. I don't know if you know this, but if you've got heart failure, you get an exaggerated weight gain before a period of crisis, and then if you hit that period of crisis, you'll come into the emergency department, then you're in hospital for weeks. But if you're monitored correctly, you can intervene with the right drugs, you get some furosemide or something, whatever it is, then that gets that under control. So you can see a lot more of that kind of stuff, remote monitoring, maybe smaller health institutions actually, with more higher levels of what we call acuity, which is higher complexity in the hospitals, but smaller.
Can you do my clinic next Monday evening? You're brilliant at this. That one's okay. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. Furosemide. That's right. That's right.
Yes, thank you. Just to take that forward then, so how do we plan for that in this jurisdiction of Jersey?
So one thing I would say, just to sort of add to that, one of my colleagues, Rachel Dunscombe, she's the CIO at Salford Royal. Salford's it's often held as being one of the premier hospitals in England, so certainly digitally. Rachel is a class act premier present company executive. She's absolutely top drawer CIO in health. And her board asked her to write a 5-year digital strategy for the organisation. She pretty much point blank refused. She said the pace of change is such these days that you can't possibly predict what you could be capable of 5 years from now. And instead started to describe, in largely in a way Abe has actually, a sort of set of ambitions that people would sign up to, and then described an 18-month max, and it might have even only been 12 months, delivery plan that would go against current capabilities, against the current sort of legacy designs you've got, and say what I'm going to do over the next 12 months. And she's committed basically to go back to her board every 3 months with a 12-month row. I think it's 18 months actually, with an 18-month forward plan. So she'll add on 3 months at the end, every 3 months with 3 months delivered. And she won't attempt to go further than that. So, and I would probably think that's the right approach these days actually. I think it's really, really hard. I mean, one of the great Gartner quotes recently, I don't know if folks have seen this, but they're predicting that we'll see the same amount of technology change in the next 3 years that we've seen in the last 50. Now that is breathtaking, isn't it? So the idea that you can actually sit here and write a 5-year strategy today, or define exactly how you're going to be working once your hospital is up and built, I think that's tricky. I think this is one of those where you've just got to keep going and changing and being comfortable with the idea of an idea becoming redundant and moving on to the next one. And that's just how it is.
I was just going to say, I think it's worth reflecting on what Abe said. If you go back to one of the drivers behind this whole programme of work regarding it was the transformation strategy for our services, for our patients. And that sets out the aging demographics, changing demand for our services, changing technology across the board. And actually identified that the ability to share information and take advantage of technology was essential. If we were going to transform our services and meet the demand that we see coming, regardless of new hospital and things that will bring, we have to do this programme work, we have to have this information, we have to be able to share it so that monitoring at home, for example, can take place. And whilst I'd agree, having a long-term plan is quite a challenge in this arena, there are some things that I think are givens. So will we always need to be able to exchange data and make sure it's about the same individual? Yes, we will. And that's a lot of what our programme is about putting that basic infrastructure in place to give us the ability to do that in the future. Whatever the device might be, the plug-in or the system, or whatever the location may be, on Jersey, at home, in hospital, in the UK, the ability to take that information in and feed it back to you as an individual or your clinician is going to exist.
I'm conscious we've got 5 minutes left, and apologies I'm going to seize the final questions. It's quite important to me, although you guys are going to be around if others want to grab them afterwards. So I've got a bit of a confession to make. I've got a bit of an ulterior motive to helping develop the digital health and care strategy here, is that I'm hoping that we can use it to build up the digital sector here in Jersey. I'm hoping we can get more homegrown companies in this space, more like Danny, well, maybe not quite like that. But certainly people with the enthusiasm of Danny, absolutely. I want to attract people here to test things, which can help us solve problems, can help upskill locals here. And hopefully some of them will think, you know what, in this day and age with the connectivity we've got, there's no reason why I can't run my business out of here. Do you think I've got a hope in hell's chance of delivering that, guys, from what you've seen?
I think you've got more than a hope in hell. I think you've got a serious contender. I think there's some dynamics here that are so unique that you really can leverage advantage out of those. The story you were telling us earlier about the fibre optic broadband to everybody's house. I mean, that is breathtaking. Outside of South Korea, I don't know any other country in the world that is attempting to achieve that. So if you get there with that's pushing streets ahead. And I mean, I live in a village, 18 miles outside of Bristol, and we haven't even got fibre to the exchange. You know, I'm on 0.4. I mean, it is properly shocking to work at home. Although sometimes your emails don't come through, and that's a blessing as well. So you know, you've got that. You've got a relatively contained environment. You've got a nice sized population. It's small enough to do stuff with, but it's big enough to matter, and therefore make use cases that can stack up. You're digitally welcoming. If I was a startup, you're the sort of place I could see you coming to, and you've got fantastic beaches and nice weather. It's kind of it's a pretty good mix, I would say.
So all human progress has costs and benefits, and those costs are generally adaptive and things that we just haven't understood. But that doesn't stop us making the progress that you want. And I think absolutely, I would say that I think the three of us, I don't want to speak on everyone's behalf, but we'd love to be out here to help you deliver that. But I would absolutely advise you to do that openness, whatever that means about standards. Stay as open as you can, because innovation moves away from closed systems. So it's not about making a quick buck, it's about making a long-term investment here. So stay open and as connected and using standards and drive that. And that, you'll be world leaders on that, because as we've said, I don't think there's a connected health economy out there yet in the way that you want to achieve it. And could be the first.
I don't know what your digital workforce is like. Clearly, 100,000 population well worth going at, but of course that means you've got a very limited pool in terms of employing people with the right skills. And the more you become reliant on digital, the more you're going to need some pretty high-level IT skills. So how are you going to achieve that? So what you'll need to think about is what you really want to do in terms of managing change and supporting clinicians and all of that. Great, because you want to do that side of the work. But do you really want to get into having to source people who can do things like manage firewalls, databases, and that kind of stuff? Is that really something that you can do? Now, I work quite closely with the Isle of Wight, and they struggle on this. They can't get people from their population. They're probably different to you as much as no one wants to go and live on the Isle of Wight. Loads of people want to come.
My mother-in-law lives on the Isle of Wight, so I don't go too often.
Probably loads of people want to come live here, but from within that population, I think the more you rely on digital, the more specialist skills you need. You're going to have a workforce strategy for the IT.
Right. Well, look, apologies to 8 o'clock, but I said the guys are going to be around if anyone wants to grab and chat. A big thank you from me. I've been a fantastic day, and I hope you see enough of us today, and I'm hoping that this is the beginning of a journey for us. I hope we can have you back. You can come and watch what we're doing, help if we can ask you for help every now and again, and perhaps push us, hold us to some of the stuff we've talked about today. But I'm sure the audience has found it as enjoyable and as stimulating as me. I'm sure they'd like to thank you as well.
Thank you very much.